Welcome to our channel,
Thank you for having me.
Felicity,
Yes.
as the Dux of School at Lauriston in 2020.
Mhm.
And that's actually the hardest year because of COVID. So today
Yes.
we have the luck to have Felicity with us to share about her experience going through IB or secondary school in Australia
Mhm.
and also growing up with Asian parents. I'm not sure if the expectation, how to manage that. How COVID impact your
Oh,
final year? That's the beginning of COVID, and a lot of
yeah.
things went from online to offline.
Yeah, it was something else. I remember the biggest part immediately was just a feeling of being quite alone
Yep,
because all my friends were at school. I was used to kind of having a lot of people, seeing everyone every day, 5 days a week, every single week.
yep,
And going from that all the way just to me being alone in our room, it's
yep.
quite a big difference. I feel like mood wise, obviously, you don't feel like there's as much fun stuff in your life to kind of get you through. If that
It's
kind of
just
makes sense.
like having all the class in your own bedroom.
Oh, awful,
Yeah,
awful. Yeah. And I did have like everything in the same room as well, which I changed later on because it was so
in your bedroom,
in my
or
bedroom.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have a
So you feel
bed
like you're
there. It was
sleeping in the classroom
awful.
all the time,
Exactly,
rather than you
exactly.
walking in your
Awful.
bedroom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how quickly you start adapting that kind of environment, and you probably because no one knows when's the ending,
Oh,
and then it
yeah.
went through all the
Mm.
way until you graduate,
Yeah,
and even after
especially
that.
especially in Melbourne, I think a lot of people were talking about how the lockdowns were going to keep lasting. We had the flash lockdowns as well, so we never had the feeling of like, oh, it's finally going to ease up because we
Mm,
just get getting hit again and again by another lockdown. But I think what was good about like Lauriston at least was there was a lot of awareness around how being online was affecting everyone. We would have, in our morning roll calls, we'd have like little meditation sessions. We'd have like, oh, go outside for a walk, take some pictures while you're outside, that kind of
just
stuff.
ensure you went out.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think there was an awareness, but I think most of it was just kind of like trial by error. You kind of realize what's been taking out a lot of the energy while you're like online learning or at home. I mean, realizing things like, oh, I need to have a separate space for studying versus sleeping and eating and all that kind of stuff.
So keep
Yeah.
yourself flexible. You can't really blame
Mm.
anyone else.
Oh no,
That's the
absolutely not.
part that you cannot control,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
back to your study.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the experience where you transit from, primary school to secondary
Mm.
school, where there's a lot of newcomers,
Mhm.
and then you were not there uh, in Lauriston in primary school.
Yep,
Yeah, how
absolutely.
did that fit in? And there's a
Yeah.
bunch of new people and a bunch of existing students, and a lot of parents share with us that where they find their kids a bit harder to fit in.
Mm. Absolutely, yeah. I think a lot of people who transfer into like year 7 and they're not new to the school feel the same kind of feeling that I did. A lot of just like walking and being like, I feel like everybody doesn't know me and they already have their own friends and that kind of stuff. But I think the reality is that there's so many people who come in at the same stage that you do, especially in year 7, because it's a huge, influx of
Huge intake,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think I just found a lot of people who also were new to the school and we somehow just hit it off during orientation day. And those people just kept being my friends until the very, very last day of year 12.
So all
Mm,
your friends, out of curiosity,
mm,
that you keep in the same group,
yeah.
were they all new to year seven?
Yes, they
So
were.
somehow the old year six
Mm.
alumni didn't take any or
No.
absorb any new friends.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe we just sought each other out. Maybe
But
it's a
but still,
coincidence, but
didn't
yeah.
bother each other. Can you tell us a little bit about like Lauriston, like
Mm,
your personal experience
mm,
with Lauriston as a girls' school rather than co school? Do you find
yes.
that when you reflect back 6 years experience, does it really benefit your like, overall personal development and study?
Yeah. I think I get a lot of questions around this, especially because I went from a co-ed school in primary school and into a girls' school in high school. I think personally, I quite liked that it was a girls' school. I know a lot of people talk about how it's a bit less distracting, and I think that's probably quite true.
Yep.
Especially in the years where people, especially girls, I start finding out like, oh my gosh, there's this guy who I'm talking to, da 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 da, all this kind of stuff. Because all that is happening outside of the school itself, it is a bit less distracting from my
Mm.
perspective, at least. But I think there's also, on the flip side, some parents are a bit worried about how, maybe my kid won't know how to socialize with the opposite gender and that kind of
That's
stuff.
my concern.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
fair. I think for me, because I did tutoring outside of school and quite like a lot of stuff a lot of other stuff outside of school, like volunteering.
Yeah.
And all of that was all co-ed and that kind of
Mm.
stuff. And I came from a co-ed primary school as well.
Yeah.
I don't think I
You
found
still hang
it.
out with the friends regularly.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes. So, I still have people who I talk to who were not women or girls at the
Yeah.
time. I don't think I found it too awkward either going to university where it was back into a co-ed environment again.
And you mentioned you actually take part-time jobs outside school.
Oh yes, yeah.
Since which year?
Since it would have been year 10.
Year 10?
Yeah.
All the way to year 12 or just year 10, 11?
All the way until year 12, yes.
And on average, how many hours per week?
Oh, I don't actually quite remember, but I think for when I first started in year 10, when, studies weren't as intense, I think I was working probably around like 16-ish hours
16 hours a week. That's a lot actually.
Yeah.
And all the way to year 12, which is the final year, did you cut hours?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I cut hours.
I still keep some hours.
Yeah,
I
I
was
did keep
surprised.
some. I think I just liked having the pocket money, if that kind of makes sense.
So you were tutoring in your year 12,
yes,
you tutoring more junior students. How many hours a week roughly? In year 12?
I think I had around 1 or 2 students, so it wasn't too bad. It was more like probably 3 to 4 hours a week. Yeah.
And you still achieve at Dux of School, which is fantastic. That really doesn't bother do you find that that's more like a break? You're taking yourself out from the intense study and then doing something else.
Yeah, I think it's nice to just focus on something else for once and have that time where I know I'm not focusing on my own
rather than 100% study.
Exactly.
Don't even
all
wash
the
the
time.
dish.
No.
Yeah. So keep the balance, have a diversified timetable rather
absolutely.
than 100% study. Overtensed. That's the key. So this is how your mom comments you. Very organized, very self-oriented, self-motivated.
Did she say that?
Have very high expectation on yourself. I'm very curious as a young adult or even younger at the time before year 12, teenagers. Where's your motivation coming from?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. I think about this a lot because I wouldn't necessarily say that my parents were very explicit with a lot of pressure, like, oh, you have to get this certain ATAR.
Not like the Asian parent, like
no, they weren't as
99%.
Yeah, they weren't
where's the
exactly
1%?
No, I think at that point it was very much so like I wanted to do them proud, if that kind of makes sense.
So since when you have that kind of feeling or stand on yourself, you want to make them proud?
I would say
that's already a very, very Asian mentality.
Yeah, probably. I think so. Yeah.
Maybe it's in your gene didn't coming out from their mouth.
Maybe. Like they didn't need to
teach me. Is that from your peer
me.
pressure? Like when did you realize that? When you reflect this, or just
I think
naturally somewhere?
Part of it was that the people that I was friends with were all somehow coincidentally were also all scholarship people who came into the school together. I think we all were quite above, like around the board, quite high achieving, and there was an element of like self comparison at that point already. And I think there was a bit of a perfectionist streak in me back in high school where I was like, oh, I have to be the best. And
yes, but it seems like you developed that mentality even before year 7.
I guess.
So how did you prepare the back to primary school year 5 for the scholarship exams? How did you prepare that? Or like who suggested, maybe we should try this? Is that from your parents or yourself or your school or?
That would definitely be from my parents. I don't think I knew what private schools and that kind of stuff was at all. But a lot of it was also from like tutoring as well, because I started tutoring since grade 3, I believe. So I was always in the environment where we were talking about schools and like where to go afterwards and universities and how we can go into like selective entry and that kind of stuff. So those conversations were being had around me ever since a young age. So I feel like it was almost, on my perspective, just like the natural step to take.
Yeah. So you actually take the time outside the normal school hours to attend private tutoring to improve some other certain stuff. Is it mainly maths or English?
We did maths, English, and we also had some like abstract reasoning and science in there as well.
Training your brain and logic.
Yeah.
Like playing the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yes.
So let's talk about the hobby and the habits.
Yes.
So what's your hobby outside school hours?
Currently, I think this year I've had a lot more time to kind of focus on my hobbies, but I've been learning electric guitar by myself.
By yourself?
Yes.
From YouTube or?
YouTube, yes.
YouTube, yeah.
Me self-teaching.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say how successful it is, but I think it's a really nice sort of almost like mindfulness because I'm just focusing on guitar when I'm playing it. I'm not thinking about anything else. Otherwise, I'm also learning how to make jewelry as well.
We can start a business on that.
I'm hoping to actually. We'll see how that goes, but I think it's just nice to sort of, while I have a bit more time during my undergrad degree, to just do some things that I like.
Yeah. So just letting everyone know, Felicity is doing the science bachelor degree and then bridging into postgrad in medicine in Melbourne Uni at the moment. So back to the hobby, like in secondary school, especially towards year 12, you still keep a work-life balance. You still have your hobby, your time to play guitar and all that?
Yes. I think back then it was a bit harder, especially in COVID, to sort of balance my time a bit more. At the same time, I feel like in COVID, it was a lot more social connection, if that kind of makes sense, because everyone was all away.
Isolated.
And yeah, exactly. So we had calls and that kind of stuff, play some games online, you know how it is.
Yep.
But I think in general, it was a bit harder to keep that balance, but I did want to keep the balance. Especially at the time I was also playing flute. So that was also a really nice kind of way to escape. And I didn't really do any grades either with my flute. So it was purely a recreational kind of hobby.
Music.
Yeah.
That's your hobby.
Yes.
Seems like it. Well, you have chose IB for your secondary and then on bridging to university. So can you tell us a little bit more why you choose IB for over VC, or is it just a school thing?
We definitely had the option. So they didn't really promote IB over VC or anything like that. I think for me, the biggest reason why I did do IB was because IB was a lot more like wider in range in terms of what we can do. You also have the option to take higher level in certain subjects. And I know I had subjects where I wanted to learn more than, you know, some other ones. So in IB, you get to do, you know, humanities, you get to do in English, maths, another language, sciences as well. And all those things I was interested in and all those things I knew I wanted to do in year 12. And while I could have done that in VC, I feel like the IB program supported that a lot more.
So the content is more like attracting you over VC.
Yeah. I think it's a lot more well-rounded.
Yeah. So some side VC is easier.
I think it depends. I think there's some people who are really good at maths and sciences and only maths and sciences, which is great for them. And I feel like that is where VC comes in a bit more of an advantage for them.
Yeah, the typical Asian vibe.
There we go. Yes.
Any advice would you like to give the younger students who want to do well for their VC or IB?
I think the biggest one that I've learned, especially during COVID, but still applicable for any situation, is make sure that whatever you're doing in year 11 and 12, and even in year 10, for some people who prepare really early, just make sure that what you're doing is sustainable. I think the idea of sustainability is so important. And I know, and I have personally as well at the very start, try like burn myself out by learning the entire course before the year even starts. And I didn't really get there, but it's not a healthy or a smart or like economically efficient way to go about studying at all. And I think to take care of yourself first is the most important to make sure you can make it through.
It seems like you very enjoy like what you chose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So make that you know, like give you energy rather than absorbing.
Absolutely. That's so important. Yeah.
And then burning you out. One chapter ahead is enough.
Exactly.
What kind of supporting system you may have, like the support you from your parents, your family, your teachers and your peers, and also maybe the private tutor outside school as well.
I think for me, especially because again, COVID, right? My parents were such like an important support for me. They weren't the type of people to be very like put a lot of pressure on that kind of stuff, but they would call me out when they saw me, you know, kind of not having very sustainable or healthy habits while studying. Also just getting me to like go outside, you know, take a break and like know when to study and when not to study. And they weren't necessarily
so they fully let yourself to drive.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they did put a lot of trust in me for that. I think they trusted that I knew what I was doing.
So they never check your work?
No.
Or what you were doing?
I think at that point, I think the stuff that I was doing wasn't in their, you know, expertise at all anymore. So I think it was very much so like, oh, we trust what you're doing. Just make sure they're doing like healthily. If that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
So who's your role model, would you say?
Oh, I would say if it was in my family, I'll say it was my mom. She's very much so the type of person who's like very hardworking, but also very empathetic. And I like really respect.
Yeah,
those
certainly.
Traits. Yeah.
So not your dad, I'm surprised. Your dad is a GP.
Well, yes.
And a doctor once.
I guess the role model is the career path, but yes.
But more your mom's character, you know, the hardworking part.
Yes.
Yep. any advice would you give to the parents, especially the Asian parents or the general parents who have very high expectation on their kids?
I think again is just, at least what worked for me was just knowing that your parents are there for you emotionally as well as just, in terms of goals. That kind of makes sense. I think it's really important for you to set the example of what your children can achieve and let them know what their goal can be and how high it can be. But at the same time, like have the trust that they can do as much as they want to, like push themselves as much as they can. If that kind of makes sense.
So the parents shouldn't really micromanaging their kids.
I think
measuring the kids on the score. Score.
Yeah. I think
go and play piano.
Yeah, I think those things can work in the negative reaction sometimes. I think it depends on the kid. Not long term, yeah. I feel long term, if they don't want to do it themselves, then it's not going to last. And
that damage the trust relationship between the parents and
I think
kids.
That's so.
What's your best experience from Lauriston?
I think my best experience was, I think the feeling of being in my year level and knowing that everyone's kind of supporting you, especially the teachers as well, like knowing I can go up to them with any questions and they'll be there to support me, that my friends are there to, not as competitors, but as people who we're all going to the same goal and like working together. I think that's a really nice part about, especially in a smaller school for me, because Lauriston is quite a small school relatively. And I knew every single person in my year level. I think that feeling of like teamwork almost.
Yes.
Yeah, really
I think I shouldn't forget to ask this question. It's about the special program that, they're one of the only two schools in Victoria, Geelong Grammar and Lauriston, in year 9 that you guys will be camping outfield and also study outfield.
Yes.
Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Oh, it was great. I honestly really liked it.
Do you have any fears or like hesitation before you go?
I think a lot of people going into it are quite scared of like the physical aspect of it. It's a lot of hiking, rock climbing, skiing, all this kind of stuff.
And for girls only.
And for girls only, yes. It's a girls only school. But I think going into it again, I think that's where that teamwork kind of really started building as a year level, because we all see each other at each other's lowest, physically or mentally or emotionally. You're missing home.
The most ugly part out of water.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all the ugliest parts. But I think that's really what brought us closer together. I think that year was really important for me to build my own independence and kind of sense of self. And I think a lot of that self-motivation that my mum was talking about before came from living a year independently with like all these girls around you and learning how to kind of be your own person.
What's your opinion? Because some of the parents are very against, some of the parents very easy, and some of the parents set certain rules and said not before year 12. So what's your opinion on that and
my own
personal observation?
I think personally, because I didn't like enter a relationship until I started uni.
Did parents give you any expectation, or they just have
really
very open conversation, just whatever?
I think
it's your choice.
We never really had a conversation.
Okay.
I think it was just implied, like don't until it's university.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it didn't set certain rules or penalty or
no, nothing like that. No.
Take the guy home if that happened.
No.
Either.
Yes.
Okay. So, but no comments, no advice, just naturally.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's just up to the person. I think personally, like if you're in year 12, if that becomes more of a burden and a drain on you,
I'll certainly set the rules for my daughter.
Oh yeah, you will?
Because I was just thinking maybe they're not mature enough to manage the emotion if things didn't go as well as
especially boys at that age, very, very mature.
Or girls,
That's true.
Either way.
Both, yes.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, of course.